Okay, we're going to try example 5 on the Unit 7 review. So an airline flies the same route at the same time each day. The flight time varies according to a normal distribution with an unknown mean and standard deviation. So that's what we're trying to find. And then on 16% of the days, the flight takes more than 2 hours. On 2.5% of the days, the flight lasts less than 96 minutes. Use this information to determine the mean and the standard deviation. Okay, so I already have this normal distribution curve here. I'm going to mark a little mark for the mean, and then I'm just going to go ahead and make marks for 1, 2, and 3 standard deviations above and below the mean. So I'm using the empirical rule, and I know that, for example, from 1 standard deviation away from the mean, above and below the mean, is 68%. And then if I figure out the tails outside of that, there's 34% left over, and if you divide 32%, there's 32% left over. If you divide 32% by 2, you get 16% on this side and 16% on the other side. So it says 16%, I'm going to use that. On 16% of the days, the flight takes more than 2 hours. So it's talking about this upper tail, that here is 2 hours, but since everything else is in minutes, like here this says minutes, I'm going to write it in minutes, so 2 hours is 120 minutes. So 120 is there. It says 16% of the days, the flight takes more than 120 minutes. This is 120 minutes. So that's this area up here. This is the 16% takes more than 120 minutes. Okay, then the other part says on 2.5% of the days, the flight lasts less than 96 minutes. Well, the 2.5% sounds familiar. That's coming from outside of the 95%. So 95% is 2 standard deviations away from the mean. This middle part, the middle 2 standard deviations away from the mean is 95%. And 2.5%, 2.5% is outside of that, because all of those together, 2.5 plus 2.5 plus 95, adds up to 100%. So it says 2.5% of the days the flights last less than 96 minutes. It's talking about this lower tail lasts less than 96 minutes. So this mark is 96. And then as long as I have those 2 marks, I can figure out what the standard deviation and mean are. So from here to here, from 96 to 120, is 3 standard deviations. So I'm just going to make a little formula. 3 standard deviations is the distance from 120 to 96, which is 24. So that means 1 standard deviation must be 8. If 3 standard deviations is 24, 1 standard deviation must be 8. So each of these marks are 8 units apart, 8 minutes apart. Then that would mean that the mean would be 120 minus, it's only 1 standard deviation above the mean, or above the mean, so minus 8. This distance right here is 8. So then the mean is 112.